Evelyn Conway, my neighbor who died at age 101. When I would be really feeling low and down, sort of despairing if we had lost victories, I would go to her apartment, knock on her door. She would have me come in, and she was an elderly African-American woman who actually had family stories and histories of slavery. And she would sing to me in her kitchen about not losing faith or hope. And she just told me, you can't let those things drag you down. And she taught me songs that I've used in the struggle here. That Evelyn just, she loved me and she embraced me. And there was a difference between our education, between color of our skin. But that didn't make a difference because we were open to knowing that we were valued in each other's presence. And she lifted my spirits up many a time, and I'll never forget her for that. I was coming to see you, Eveline, this very afternoon. Warmth washed over my body, an expectation of sitting with you, joy in my bones, in anticipation of your voice. But when I called, I was too late.
Over-the-Rhine Community Housing is an important community-based organization that ensures that affordable housing in Over-the-Rhine is a part of Over-the-Rhine's future. It's been a part of its past, but they're also trying to make sure it's a part of the present and the future. So they're an inclusive organization that is doing much to ensure that Over-the-Rhine remains an inclusive community.
Over-the-Rhine Community Housing is an effective developer, manager of housing with empathy for people who may have had trouble staying stably housed. So people of very low income, perhaps people with some disabilities or some challenges that require them to have a little more support in order to remain stably housed.
I would describe OTRCH as a cutting-edge CDC that has done really great large projects and can be a model for other community development corporations because of the work that they've done in the community.
They have a real expertise when it comes to housing development that most other nonprofits simply don't have. And when you combine that, I think with the mission of the organization, where it's driven to really serve low-income people and make affordable housing that's decent available to them, it's pretty unique, and their expertise is very high. I mean, what they do it's incredible, the difference that they make in the lives of tenants. I mean, it's a national model for how to provide housing for the folks who need it the most.
I think the way in which they quietly go about continuing to figure out how to put together these increasingly complicated deals and manage property with a challenged population that's more and more in a hot spot is really a great credit to their leadership and to the board that supports them, because they've had to make decisions that were right for the organization, right for the mission, right for the people they serve, but weren't necessarily pleasing to maybe some of the funders or some of the other voices that they hear in the community.
The she who is ancient was calling me to you. Why did I not heed the urgency of her call? I want to grow in deeper respect for the grace of great things in my life. Your life is a great thing and a grace to me.
This just kind of goes back to my beginning involvement with Restock and then later Over-the-Rhine Housing Network that then joined to be Over-the-Rhine Community Housing. I think that I've just really learned over the years that the work that they do is really impossible work. Financially, politically, just really practically hard to do, and it can't be done without a lot of different people with skill sets and commitments coming to the table to do it, whether that is like slugging through, vacant buildings and hauling out rubble, whether that is helping with raising money at small little school fundraisers, whether that is unions who would, through their apprentice programs, help us put on roofs, or contractors who would work with us as we were doing larger developments, or residents that really became a part of those communities and moved into buildings maybe for their first time in their first homes, and at Buddy's Place made that their home and were a part of giving tours to the community, to show the work.
And it's just that sheer determination that a lot of people may not see. It's difficult to do affordable housing, and I can see why developers may not want to get into it, but it is rewarding if you're able to see, to respond to this need, because our people need a place to live.
They have figured out how to navigate in the world of 3CDC and redevelopment successfully while being true to their principles and mission. And that's a hard balance to achieve. And that's part of the reason why we support them. I think it's an important voice to keep strong in the community.
There are organizations in our community who can work with the homeless. There are organizations in our community who can work with the very rich. There are organizations that can work with poor people or people who are housed and want very nice upscale housing. Over-the-Rhine Community Housing can work with all of those people. They have a way of putting people at ease that makes everyone feel like they are a part of whatever is going on. And that is what we need at this time in our community's life, at this time in our country's life. We could take lessons from them about how they do that.
When I was a volunteer, I never really, from a middle-class white community that was pretty segregated, I didn't imagine that I had much in common with a person who was in recovery, who was 25 years older than me, struggling with addiction. But we built an apartment together, and that changed something. It changed something in me for sure, and I think it can change things in communities. And that kind of stuff happens all the time at Over-the-Rhine Community Housing.
I long to hear your ancient black woman's voice, to listen to your stories, your laughter. I wanted to ask you, what well do you draw on to keep on keeping on? I wanted to hear your answer, to be held by your wisdom. I am yearning to revive that deep well within, reaching for voices to speak to me, and more than me. I was reaching for your voice, Eveline.
It's tempting to blame a lot of the difficulties we have in society on the fact that we don't see the world through other people's eyes, and we're not empathetic, we're not sympathetic, we're not open to the fact that the world doesn't work the same for everybody. And the closer you live to folks who are from all types of backgrounds, the more you realize that underneath it all, we're all quite a bit more similar than we are different.
There was one particular fellow by the name of Bill Angelo. And Bill, the first time I saw him, I was bringing some food down from Elder High School down to the drop-in center. And Bill was literally in the gutter. They brought him into the drop-in center, and he went through the program. He was a highly skilled construction worker. We hired him right after he went through his 6 months. He worked for us for a number of months, fell off the wagon. Ended up back at the drop-in center. He came out again and worked for us, and not too long later fell off the wagon again. And when he came back after that, he said, "I know if I drink again, I'll die." And from then on, he never did. And not only did he become one of our best maintenance guys, but he would be the guy that would be continuing to fix issues in the housing, 10 o'clock at night, whenever it was needed. And most of the time wasn't even on the clock. He was just seen as there to help. He constantly was smoking unfiltered Camels, which I think was the thing that finally got him. And back then I could not help but smoke them with him because he made it look so good. To sit back and smoke a Camel with Bill Angelo was just a treat. And I remember shortly after Buddy was shot, we had a situation down on Republic Street where Buddy had made some promises to a barber in one of our buildings, and he was irate because it wasn't happening. And he came in at a board meeting and started yelling, and so I walked out with him because he was just totally disrupting the meeting and so on. And I said, okay, we'll walk down and you can show me what's going on. And I looked back and it was Bill walking right behind us because he knew it could have been dangerous for me. And he was right there. Just looked like, he just was tagging along, It was a great memory, Bill.
And I think that a lot of folks can kind of look at Over-the-Rhine, I think, in the period of these last 40 years and not see what I see in terms of that strong rootedness, that network of support that's here, just people leaning on each other for support. That's valuable, and it's about love. It's not only about preserving the historic buildings, which are beautiful, but I would say we need to preserve the community, that bond of love that is between our neighbors.
There's only so much character that comes from the architecture, and the rest of it is based on the people that make up the community. And we have had our car washed by Andre the singing giant, or and he comes by and washes the car, and it's Andre biking down the street singing. And that's what attracted us, is because he's here, he wants to be a part of the neighborhood as much as we want to be a part of the neighborhood.
Feeling low one day, I came knocking on your door, you and me, sitting around your kitchen table. What is your well for strength? I asked. Do you remember what you told me? Honey, I can't read nor write, but the Lord sure gave me wisdom.
I felt working with them around Venice on Vine, they were very open to allowing the development of that business. There wasn't any intrusion or, we abided by the rules and, the laws and everything, but, they worked with UC and Miami students, and who were really having a great time creating all kinds of nice things. But there was never any sense of control or intrusion.
We're currently in middle of construction phase of a senior housing project at 15th and Elm, and so we're real proud about that. This building will have elevator and community space for seniors, and a sense that they can have a community there.
I'm not planning to move in there in the next couple of years, but we were teasing about that and talked to the lady that was working with them, and I said, well, here's a problem. We have a dog. And I said, I know usually in these places it's a 25-pound limit on a pet. And I said, and he's 50 pounds. She said, there's two of you. I said, you're my kind of person. So we do talk about that. But it is nice to have senior housing in the area.
We've been a part of the Recovery Hotel on Vine Street, which is housing for people that have already gone through some kind of recovery program, and they need, a support sense of community. They live in their own apartments. And obviously Buddy's place. Obviously Buddy was one of our founding leaders of both our, the housing organization. And that building is for people who have come out of shelters. and need a place to live. And so there's Buddy's place.
I think you really have to have the long view in order to do that, knowing that it's not going to be done overnight, that sometimes even just one project can take 4 or 5 years. And I think the resiliency, and I think just having the persistence to see it through, while not necessarily inspiring, day to day, it is inspiring when you look at kind of the longer view.
They've done the full range of things, and they've also developed a supportive, the Jimmy Heath House, which is, the unit that really makes sure that people who are chronic alcoholics, who've been chronically homeless, have a place of dignity to live, and for many of them, unfortunately, live out the last days of their life in dignity.
It's offering a stabilization to those who are chronically homeless and may have just different social problems, and so that provides them with a stable environment, and that's what a lot of individuals need, is a stable environment.
I've worked with chronic alcoholics, addicts for 35 years, and I'm passionate about the fact that addiction is a disease, that treatment works, that people get better, and that even if they don't, we don't kick people to the curb who have cancer who don't get better. We best not do it with people who have addiction.
With the Jimmy Heath House, there was a lot of individuals opposing the concept, and it was a creative, innovative project that had never been done before, where you're taking 6 individual buildings and then providing breezeways to connect the units so that it's actually one cohesive or one facility. And it ended up being an amazing project at the end, but there were those challenges in the beginning that didn't see the vision, and so it ended up coming out to be something that was very positive for everybody, the city, for the residents, for the neighborhood, and for OTRCH.
John lived on the streets, off and on in the drop-in center, off and on in the jail, off and on in various treatment programs, probably for 20 to 25 years. And he decided that going into Jimmy Heath would be something that he would try, but he didn't expect it to work. And he went in there because some of his friends were. They were going in, and he said, well, okay, I'll try it. He has now had periods of sobriety, not because they made him become sober, but because he wanted to try that. And they made it attractive and possible for him. He's sleeping in a bed for the first time in years, and talks about this place with such pride. And he makes sure that everybody knows that they can't mess this place up. He is just so invested in it as his home. And that, for me, is the miracle of Jimmy Heath House.
There's been an issue recently with the sheriff's office, I think in a humane way, but trying to get the homeless people who are sleeping in front of the courthouse, trying to get them to be moved somewhere else. And while I'm cautiously optimistic that they're going to do that in a ethical way, what that shows is that we have a real need still in this community for housing for people who are the hardest to serve, which I suspect a lot of the folks who are sleeping there are. And that's why the Jimmy Heath House has been such a great success that we need to replicate that model. And it's not cheap. I mean, that was an expensive project to get done, but if the city is going to spend money redeveloping for-profit commercial development, they could certainly spend some additional funds to do another Housing First model. I mean, I was skeptical of the Housing First model when I first heard about it, but I did some of the research and I've seen how successful Jimmy Heath House has been. We need to replicate that. And if the city wants to deal with a homeless issue, let's deal with it in a way where there's going to be a project that would best serve the folks who need that help.
Something that we didn't cover is the Anna Louise Inn that OTRCH will be moving forward, focusing on this next big grand project, which will be a new construction, a 64,000 square feet new construction project in Mount Auburn. So this is going to be a new, challenging, at the same time, exciting project coming forth in 2014. So the Department of Trade and Development is looking forward to working with OTRCH in this endeavor to see this project come to fruition.
You started to sing a spiritual. I can sing my religion. The world can't do me no harm. I can walk my religion. Yes, yes, the world can't do me no harm. And you know what you told me, Eveline? You said, Bonnie, when you feel low, start to humming. It will lift your spirits, but you got to hum like you know it.
Over-the-Rhine has changed so much in the past 5 years. You could argue that things are better, but you could argue maybe that things are worse because there's somewhat more invisibility for people even than there used to be, as there are some market forces that have changed the mix of businesses and buildings and housing and people in the neighborhood.
Some of the restaurants, I couldn't afford a sandwich in some of them. You know, a lot of us couldn't, you know. We need stores and everything, just like the rest, you know. Normal stores, we won't fill out a place going in or a restaurant that we wouldn't have to pay a week's grocery for that one dinner.
What I would like to see is perhaps for Mary to, or a representative from Over-the-Rhine Community Housing to perhaps participate in assisting us in thinking outside the box on affordable housing, assisting us in looking ahead at the big picture. You know, we have dwindling federal funds. We have an increase in opposition to permanent supportive housing. We have rough economic conditions. And rough economic conditions tend to, in some instances, allow people to not be as normally as inclusive as they might be, or normally as assisting as they might be. And so it very easily becomes a situation of you're on your own out here. And I think we would welcome the input of Mary and her organization to assist us as we begin to think outside the box with how we address affordable housing in the future, how we address mixed income housing in the future.
And I've always regretted the fact that the plan that we worked on some years back that got lost in the shuffle when they did away with the planning department, that they didn't pay attention to that plan because it called for a spectrum of housing rather than high-end and low-income.
I think mixed income is important to a community because it represents the reality world in which we are living in.
I think it makes the world go round, quite frankly. I mean, if we're all the same and we surround ourselves with people that look and act and think like us, there's just, you lose that richness that a real strong, particularly a strong urban core, I think that's one of its biggest strengths, is to be inclusive and should reflect all income levels and facets of a given community, ethnicity, all sorts of variety.
We live in Loveland. We love being in Loveland. It's a great neighborhood. But what we're looking for with this next phase in our life is an area that is more diverse economically, diverse culturally, diverse racially, and just enjoying that diversity. And it would be tempting and others have done so, to look at what's going on in Over-the-Rhine and assume that it's going to be an Epcot version of Over-the-Rhine in a couple of years. And I went to Mary Burke Rivers to kind of get her take on it and make sure that there was a sense that that diversity was going to survive. So to be honest, it was Over-the-Rhine Community Housing that convinced us that we did indeed want to move into the neighborhood.
You hear a lot of people talk about having a mix of housing in Over-the-Rhine, but without an organization like Over-the-Rhine Community Housing, you're not going to have that mix. I mean, the low-income people are going to be moved out of the neighborhood.
I wonder, maybe I need to be talking to more people that are moving into this neighborhood and saying, well, do you know about these places? Do you know about Over-the-Rhine Community Housing? Do you know about all these residents that are important?
And then the wealthy people might find out that the unwealthy are normal and are good. Well, you know, we can have a picnic or something one day. That we're all human, you know. We don't have that much money. You know. We have just as many intelligent people as anybody else do. They just don't have the money.
My expectation of Over-the-Rhine is for all residents to come together, whether you be market rate, living in a condo off somewhere, or whether you be in affordable housing. I want to see everyone come together as one. I want to see a person, a low-income resident, maybe be able to sit and talk with, someone that's in a higher bracket, and to feel comfortable with talking to that individual.
I'm a humming, Eveline. Can you hear me humming? Will you keep humming with me? I don't want to be too late for the grace of great things.
I would just like for everyone to maybe go on our website and get some information. Call us, stop by, and hear all the good things that we have to say. Hear and see all the good things that we have going on. You may be amazed. You may be amazed, at what our small organization does, because we have so many beautiful people here that are willing to help you and work with you.
Over-the-Rhine Community Housing is for the ones that really need it, and that's what they're there for. It's a wonderful place. It's going to be there. They're not going to be pushed away. Everybody know that they are going to stand their ground, and I'll be there with them. I may be sitting, but I'll be there with them.